I can,
Come over.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead. Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, September 7th, 2023. This is
Oh, yep, there we are. Sorry. We'll start over. It's Thursday, September 7th, 2023. This is the first curriculum subcommittee meeting of the Darien Board of Education for the 2023-2024 school year. Welcome to everybody that is here. We have a full cast of characters sitting around the table, and we are excited to listen to you all. Let us know what's been happening over the summer. So I will turn it over to Dr. Adley and welcome Dr. Fettigan to the table for the first time for these.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you back. Thank you to my colleagues around the table for all of your work over the summer, and to Julie and Amy for their work in organising and supporting the work of our department chairs. And given it's the curriculum committee, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, this is a different mic. It works.
Always
Everyone
on,
hear me? All right, it's yours, I think, normally, Sarah. Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today for my first meeting with this awesome team. Once again, I want to thank Julie Droller, our Director of Elementary Curriculum, for her support and assistance over the summer to ensure curriculum continued development and continued professional learning for staff, and this team as well of department chairs. I'm happy to have you all back, and really we're excited to share what the professional learning experiences have been for our staff over the summer and the continued curriculum work for the school district. So we'll start with that today, and then later in the agenda, we will talk a little bit about a K-3 update in the area of literacy. The world of literacy is moving very quickly. Sarah, we're even emailing over the weekend about some updates, and we have new information since we've even created this agenda. And the third topic will be our paraprofessional formula that we will dive into today. So first and foremost, I think one of the most important commitments the district can make is to continue to look at the curricula to ensure that we have a robust curricula for our students that's built to meet the needs of the staff and students before us. So I want to thank this team for that. We will continue in our work to draw a distinction between programs and curricula. Those are very different things. When we talk about curriculum, it would be, I think, nearly impossible to not also talk simultaneously a bit about instruction. That's how we implement the curriculum, assessment, how we ensure that it's meeting the needs of our students and advancing their outcomes, and certainly the professional learning that needs to be simultaneous to ensure that our staff have a readiness to implement the curriculum. So you'll be hearing in our presentations continuously as we move forward a little bit about each of those things and we make some curricular shifts. So at this point, we're going to take this by department. And we also shifted this a little bit. I think in previous years, there was a bit about curriculum summer work and then a looking ahead after. This time we thought we would take the approach of by department, talking about the summer curricular work that happened, providing an update, and then immediately after for that department, a look ahead to next steps. So with that, I will turn it over to the team.
Dr. Fettigan, we were just talking before you arrived that I think we could take board questions after each department, and then I am fine with the department chairs leaving to head back to get the work done, if that's.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah,
Hi, Tara.
did you guys let Dave in? He's been sitting in the waiting room.
Oh, sorry, Michelle's not here.
Good morning. I don't see Dave in the waiting room.
Okay, I'll let him know. He said he's sitting there.
So as, is that okay to continue?
Yes, go ahead.
So as we continue, at the beginning of the presentation, we did think it was important to provide some consistent language for the Board of Education and the rest of our community around some of the terms that we'll be using today and throughout the year. I will shift to that now in the agenda. I forgot that on the clicker this morning. Sorry about that. These are terms that we'll be using today and in the future as we talk about curricular work. We've talked a bit about these actually most recently in our board retreat. The idea is that we do develop curriculum with using a UBD approach. I know this board is familiar with that. We're also talking a bit about universal design for learning and ensuring that we are approaching curricula that we're writing with the needs of all learners in mind on the front end to promote that access for all. EduPlanet, you're going to be hearing today and in days ahead about the progress that we're making with including the units as they're written into EduPlanet. Long-term transfer goals are those goals that we want our students to be able to take with them to support their learning beyond the unit into future courses of study and beyond. The unit is that collection of thematic content where students will learn in a given period of time, and the UBD design has students written into different stages. So you'll hear the department chairs today talk a little bit about how that's being approached in each of the departments. I'm going to turn it over at this point to Colleen, who is our director for music.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. So we had 6 teachers working on curriculum this summer, and we accomplished several things that were on our curriculum learning plan. So last year I presented details on our new First Steps in Music curriculum that's been implemented in grades K and 1. The curriculum's in really great shape, and it includes a month-by-month learning plan with assessments for all K1 teachers, and all the students in the district are following that. This summer, we got all the units in K1 entered into EduPlanet, which means we have the music curriculum now formatted into UBD. This is something we're really proud of because it's especially difficult to revise and format music curriculum so that it's both user-friendly for teachers and that it meets standards for high-quality UBD units. So by taking the time to do it right in K1, we now have a template to follow for our next set of revisions, which we will complete for all grades and all ensembles. So we also got to work on grades 2 through 5. And just to be clear, we do already have a full curriculum for K5 general music that was revised in 2016, and we're still using that as we move forward with revisions. But we did hone in on our scope and sequence, making sure that all students have guaranteed experiences in each grade level, no matter which school they attend or which teacher they have. So we did a pretty detailed revision on grade 2. So we're just continuing up the grade level chain. So we developed a month-by-month learning and assessment plan that's formatted the same way as K1. Grade 2 is where we introduce written notation to students. So we use the songs and games they know from grade 1, and then we show them how to decode, read, and write the notes. As we continue this process each year with each subsequent grade level, we'll be sure that all students are leaving elementary school well positioned to continue their study of music on any instrument or in any type of ensemble that they choose. So as you know, we have a new guitar class starting at the high school that started last week. Kudos to Chris Andrade for his hard work this summer, drafting a curriculum for our new guitar ensemble. So we pulled from the many available resources to design lessons, including utilizing the materials and techniques that we learned during our professional learning last year. So we brought in some experts to train the entire department on high quality guitar instruction. And then Chris, who's teaching the class, worked with that practitioner specifically during his professional learning last year. So we're excited to get that going. And then the last 2 bullets represent the culmination of an intensive curriculum revision for MMS Music Explorations, which I've presented on before. Kudos to Joel Connect for taking the lead on developing and revising the units and entering them into EduPlanet. So now we have students working on sound production, music composition, guitar, and keyboard in each grade level. And depending on scheduling and how many students choose ensembles each year, we often have teachers from band, chorus, or orchestra who pick up sections of music explorations. So because of the curriculum work we've done in this area over the past 2 years, teachers without a lot of experience teaching these types of music classes can do so with fidelity, which is of course what's best for students. Looking ahead in music, as I shared on the last slide, we're implementing our revised grade 2 learning and assessment plan this year. In MMS music, we're working on identifying and devising guaranteed literacy experiences for all students in grades 6 through 8 music through the PLC process. This will include unifying our teaching practices so that students are learning how to read music in similar ways with similar outcomes, whether they choose band, chorus, orchestra, or music explorations for their music elective. I spoke about the guitar ensemble that's being piloted. It's being piloted with full inclusion so that students who may have received music instruction in a small group adaptive setting in the past are going to apply the skills they learned in that setting within the guitar ensemble. Students in adaptive music often practice their rhythmic and tonal skills through strumming and drumming. So we purchased adaptive devices for the guitars that make chord changes easier to manage. This means that students with a wide range of abilities can successfully play together in a group. So we're looking forward to seeing that in action as the school year progresses. And just the bottom represents just some broad things that are going on in music this year. We're preparing for our district-wide choral festival this year. So we're following up on the success of our band festival with Dallas Brass and our strings festival with Electrify Your Symphony. We have guest artists coming for performances and master classes, including the tenor bass a cappella groups from Princeton and Yale. Our main event will be on March 27th, which will combine non-auditioned festival choruses from all 5 elementary schools and from the middle school with our high school ensembles for a workshop and concert with Dr. Jeremy Wiggins and his university singers from WCSU. So we're going to collaborate with a local university so that hopefully students can see themselves, performing on stage, whether they become engineering majors or music majors in the future. So information will be going home soon about that. We're also preparing for a visit from the Tri-State Consultancy team, which will be focusing on the visual and performing arts from January 31st through February 2nd. Jacqueline Samus and I are co-chairing that visit, and we look forward to engaging with our visitors to basically show off the work that our teachers and students are doing, but also receive their feedback on our programs and curriculum. And finally, we've started working with Met Interactive on the audio and video upgrades to the DHS auditorium. The prep work has begun. Engineers have been in doing lots of detailed measuring, and we're ordering everything. We'll use the windows that we have between, I guess, performance seasons, if you will. So kind of now, and then things ramp up in the fall, and then we'll use some downtime in end of December through January to get those upgrades completed. And it appears we're on track to get them done this year as planned.
Great.
So that's it.
Thank you, Colleen. I just have a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for all the work that you've done. It's clear that you've hit the ground running when you arrived in the district and
Thank
are
you.
really working to strengthen the department. So that's great. Thank you. How many kids are in or students are in the DHS guitar class? Do you know?
We're running 2 semester classes. So we have I think it's like 15 per semester between 10 and 15
So
per
there
semester.
is demand for that. That's great.
100%. And
Absolutely.
I'm noticing it's great because I'm noticing kids that I've never seen before down in the department mixed in with some of our students who have already been in band, chorus, and orchestra. So
Awesome. Thanks.
absolutely.
Other questions? Tara, I can't see you. So if you have questions, can you just shout them out? For some reason, you're dark.
I'm good, thanks.
I am good also. Did Mr. A have to learn guitar? to teach?
He already knew some basics of guitar, but he actually took it upon himself to get guitar lessons last year. So he's quite a team player. So
Great. But no, I think you covered everything. Thank you so much.
Sure. Mr. Brown, you're now in. I think, do you have any questions?
No, that was great. I'm all good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. All right. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you so much, Colleen, and to your team. The very first day of school, Dr. Adley, we're in all of the schools, and students had instruments in their hand, were making music, and we heard our choral students as well. So they're already making music and ready to go. We're going to shift our attention to mathematics now. And so we are joined today by Dr. Felicia Bellows and also Roni Rodier, who is our new department chair for this area. And they're sitting together today, I think, is another indication of the very strong support we have in place for a transition with the department work. So I want to thank you both for being here today.
Thank you. Good morning. And I'm very appreciative. I was just going to say the same thing, to speak with all of you about the work that was done over the summer, but also as I transitioned with Ms. Rodier to the secondary math program and talking about how we're transitioning. At the end of the school year, teachers from Middlesex and Darien High School met as a team in June to work on units in EduPlanet. One of the more time-consuming pieces of this work was the incorporation of the vision of the graduate goals and departmental goals into stage 1 of it. And that may sound like a simple component to just add a few goals into stage 1. One of the most distinguishing features of our teachers at Darien Public Schools is that they're very thoughtful, they're very reflective, and everything that goes into those conversations, how does the vision of the graduate fit into stage one, was very time consuming actually, and very lengthy. So it actually slowed us down a bit, but the conversations were good. And I think that we have now a better understanding of how we're structuring assignments and how we're looking at each unit to present a cohesive unit of study vertically across 6 through 12 math program. There was a list of things that were worked on in June, including stage 1 of Math 6 Advanced, 6 Accelerated Pre-Algebra, Geometry, Algebra, and Algebra 2. So we focused on those courses and making sure that the stage 1 was ready to be published, in the sense that it's ready for review from the department and then to be put on our website as the units of study. There was also the development of benchmark exams for first and third quarter. And the idea behind that, and we developed that for Algebra and Algebra 2 and Geometry. And the idea behind that was there's a need for consistency and alignment. First of all, between all teachers, we have a lot of teachers teaching the same courses. And we felt that when time rolls around for mid-years, there's a lot of anxiety around mid-year exams and the amount of material that's on mid-year exams. And so we're really focusing on making all of the assignments, everything cumulative, so that there's never the need to relearn or review large chunks of work. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but so that was a big part of the work, was the first quarter and third quarter creating departmental exams. And as she'll speak about that a little bit more. We also realigned some units of study in pre-calculus to align with the AP pre-calculus curriculum. And although we don't have the AP pre-calculus curriculum right now or the course offered, it may be something that's offered in the future. And with that in mind, we created some units of study that were more aligned to what the College Board has in their program. For next steps and for looking ahead, Ms. Rodeo will talk about some of it, but one of the things that it seems like yesterday in 2019, I presented to the board about a new primary resource, and it was an updated Big Ideas resource for grades 6th, 7th, 8th, and also in Algebra 1. So that was a 6-year, and it's expiring in a couple of years. And I know with the budget process and staying ahead a year, one of the things that moving into next year is to look at primary resources again, to have a team K-12 of looking at the math program and keeping it vertically aligned, but also having a vertical team to look at the new resources. Do we want to stay with Big Ideas in the middle school? And then, what are we going to present? So that's something that maybe we'll form the team this year, but then moving into next year, you'll hear more about the books that are looked at, the resources that are looked at, and where we're going with that. And I think Ms. Rodeo will talk about some of the future possible course proposals in the math department, perhaps collapsing the 4 levels of math in grade 8 to 3, and the work that's been done with the thinking classroom. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thanks, Felicia. I'm Ronnie Rodier, the new math chair, and as Felicia mentioned, we are working closely together. It's a pleasure to meet everyone today. It's an honor to be here. For next steps this year, we're looking at 2 Darien High School courses, Honors Geometry and AP Pre-Calculus, that are in the pipeline. We will see how that works through the new course process in the district. If approved, I look forward to working on that with you. The thinking classroom instructional practices is the focus for the math department, grades 6 through 12, as we move forward. This was the initial professional development that teachers had at the beginning of this school year that I presented. The thinking classroom teaching practices foster higher level mathematical mindsets of perseverance, accountability, and problem solving, which organically support the vision of the graduate competencies. Our next steps will include embedding these vision of the graduate opportunities prudently in units and collaborating together on unit-rich tasks in all our courses that can be implemented throughout the year. In addition, we will continue our EduPlanet work judiciously, develop stage 3 for the works in progress, especially for algebra and geometry.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
You answered my questions that I had written down, so thank you. Julie, do you have anything?
I do. Thank you so much and nice to meet you. This is for math, and also I was thinking this as I was going through all the presentations for today. As we work to embed vision of the graduate into our curriculum, I think it will be helpful to have examples. Just hearing you discuss that just there made me understand it better. But I think examples that can help us understand how are we building these competencies into the science curriculum, for example. Some disciplines lend themselves to it more easily than others, clearly. But I think, since that's a big focus this year, it'll be helpful for us to keep that as a constant practice, and also as we go to the full board to help bring all of that to life. So everyone gets it. I don't know if that's a question for now or for later.
If I could just respond, Ms. Best, to that, that's absolutely the direction that we'll take. So part of looking at next steps with vision of the graduate and thinking about the curricula are looking really specifically about the knowledge, skills, and dispositions within each of those attributes in each curricular area. So that will definitely be a part of curriculum revision. Also, when we think about how we implement the curriculum through instruction, what are we asking students to actually do with the curricula in the classroom? And then there will be varied opportunities when we assess learning for students to demonstrate mastery of those attributes of vision of the graduate and those related knowledge, skills, and dispositions throughout their experiences ELP through grade 12.
I think that the vision of the graduate, it's easier to define than it is to implement in many districts across the state. I think the board knows that we kicked off this year a convocation with trying to give pre-K to 12. We actually window into what it actually might look like for students, what we call to produce beautiful work reflecting the vision of the graduate. But that's definitely a work in progress, and then we'll look forward to sharing examples along the way. But thank you for the question.
No, I think that's helpful because it seems like a big nebulous document, and to have specific examples is really helpful.
And something that we'll also look to is to see where are there pieces of, I guess, maybe evidence of vision of the graduate that already exists within the curricula. So we want also everybody to understand it's not that the vision of the graduate is a new thing. It is the thing, right? It's when we write a course, it's through the lens of vision of the graduate. When we think about developing budget, it's through the vision of the graduate lens. So, and a lot of what is existing in our curricula already will address many of the attributes, but we need to be more explicit and then do a gap analysis and see what's not being addressed as it should be.
Great, thanks, Amy. Dave, Tara, any math questions?
No, I appreciate the follow-up asking for, examples. And, for me, I'm just thinking cost benefit analysis, how much time was spent doing the alignment with portrait of the graduate and how much time was spent on that effort and what we're going to get in the long run. So look forward to hearing more on that.
Thanks. Thank you.
Shifting to Mr. Keeler with 612 Social Studies.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So the work that we did, you can see on the screen here, I've given you a summary of some of the work that we went through this summer. To make sense of it, we really focused a lot on refining and further developing our stage 1 in many of our core classes. And what that really means is similar to what Dr. Bellows was just talking about, we really looked at embedding those vision of the graduate competencies, but even dug into the more granular learner outcomes. Those are really what a student might do in your class that actually brings that vision of the graduate to life. And I can actually, just as we were talking here, I can give you an example of what that might look like. So one that you might see in some of our stage 1 work would be for creativity. I take academic risks without fear of making mistakes in front of peers. And so we want our students, when they're writing, for example, to feel like they can take an academic risk, to put forward a thesis that's off the beaten path, that proves something that maybe their peers hadn't thought of, or is something that's more unique or original. Another might be under communication, or formulate questions to effectively gather and evaluate information for accuracy. And so when we have, this is something that can happen in virtually any unit, but there are some units where we might be engaging in more research, where students are going to be creating their own questions to guide the work that they do. That's going to be useful in evaluating information. That's where it might come in even more so. So just to try to give a brief sense of what we're talking about, that work with vision of the graduate and learner outcomes is really important. We also embedded our departmental long-term transfer goals, which we developed and approved as a department last year. We did this for virtually all of our core classes, and even expanded that into some of our honors classes and some of our electives at the high school. All told, we had more than half the department who participated in some form of curriculum work this summer, which was really great to have so many people being interested in helping to develop this with our department. In terms of our work that we're looking ahead, if you wouldn't mind just sliding to the next slide for us. The work that we have to do, I kind of divided into our instructional work and our curriculum work. In terms of our instructional work, we now live in this AI world, and it's something that we, I think, have to learn to live with. And so that's one of the things that we're taking a look at this year is how do we teach students to act with integrity, to be curious, to be independent, when you also have this AI chat GPT or whatever the model might be that is available to you that can do a lot of work for you. So that's something that we're working with to figure out, how do we explain this to students? How do we talk with students? How do we teach students to work with this system that is certainly here to stay? We're also continuing to work on reading strategies that are going to help students to understand the complexity of a text. This is carrying over from our work last year. This is something we felt like was really important. If students are going to understand the world around them, they have to be able to read and interpret texts from all different types. It's one of the things that we're continuing to work on. We also want our students to be independent. One of the things that we're trying to do is ensure that our students feel like they have the confidence, the skills, and the knowledge that they can really embrace their learning and move it forward without needing very regular approvals from the teacher in order to make progress. And that's something that we're continuing to work on. We'll still be working on embedding the vision of the graduate competencies into our classes, as we started to do over the summer and now are putting into practice. In terms of our curriculum work, we do have a couple of course proposals that will be making their way through the process that hopefully will be here with the board in a few weeks or months. We also will continue to develop stage 3 for our courses, where we really look at that learning plan and dive into it a little bit further for some of the courses as we've made more progress. And for our elective courses and some of our AP classes at the high school, we'll be developing that stage 1 and 2 of the EduPlanet model that we've been using, the UBD model that we've been using. The last thing I feel like I've been mentioning now for far too long, but is still out there, are the new state content standards. And I just reached out and was able to get some more understanding of it. But in October, they should be voted on by the state committee that will finally approve them officially. And then once those are official, then I'll be able to start working with the department to see what's in there and to see what, if any, impact that will have on our classes. I feel very confident that what I have seen and what I've looked at so far very much matches what we're doing. And there shouldn't be anything that's going to require any drastic changes to our work, but certainly it's something that we want to take a closer look at. So.
When are those standards, once they're approved, are they for next school year, or how much time is there to adjust?
Well, I think what we have to do is, I think once they're approved, I think they're there and they're out there.
Okay, so it's,
But it's something that districts have to take a look at and implement for their district. And so again, I feel like I'm not worried that there's going to be huge changes that we have to make, as much as there may be some smaller changes that are in order, but that's something that we'll have to look at in the coming months.
thanks. Can I just touch on the AI piece? This is fascinating to me. I mean, I noticed when my 8th grader brought home, the from each class that the parents have to sign the contract, whatever. Many of them, or not many, some of them mentioned AI in there, that they would not be using AI or relying on AI.
Yeah.
How are you as a department, and maybe this is for anybody else who wants to answer it, how are you approaching that and policing that and using it? And,
Yep.
I mean, it's a bigger conversation, but if there's just a couple tidbits.
So that is something that we actually spent some of our August professional development as a social studies group working on and thinking about. And, we're trying, I likened it to Wikipedia for the department and asked them the question, how has the way that you've talked about or used or taught your students about Wikipedia changed over time? And initially, it couldn't be trusted. Don't go near it. Don't ever access it. It's not something we want students to be around. But over time, as it's become it's there to stay. It's accessible. It's something that we've changed and really teach students how to use. So if you're conducting research, it's a good place to go for an initial overview of a topic, so you understand this is a topic that I do in fact want to research. And perhaps there are some terms, people, ideas, dates that you're then going to look up and do some further research into. I think we want to think similarly with the AI, that we don't want it to replace the work that students do. And we want to ensure that the work the students are putting forward comes from their own minds. But this is a pretty cool tool that can do quite a bit. And some of our time that we spent together in August was also just getting to play with it a little bit and see what can it actually do. Because it's kind of shocking how time-saving it can be. And it's certainly not perfect, but it's something that's kind of interesting. So we're trying to strike a balance between using a tool that is very powerful, but also encouraging students to be independent thinkers, to be curious, and also to act with integrity when they're doing their work. And so that's kind of the middle line that we're trying to find with this. And I think, it's something that at the older grades, you may hear more about than at the younger grades. But it is something that we are thinking about and wanting students to know that we're thinking about, so that we're all on the same page with it.
I had a parent ask me the other day if the district has any of those, I don't know what they're like, the scanners that you can throw a paper through and see if it's been used by AI. Is that something that is used here, or is that?
So it's something that I don't want to cut off
Steal-
other people off.
steal
If you
his
want to
thunder.
chime in, feel free to. It's frankly something that we're looking at. I mean, we didn't purchase anything that I'm aware of that we have for this. They're all available online. But one of the things that we did as a group in our August PD was to take one of the things that you generated on in your AI experimenting and put it into one of these trackers and see what it comes up with. And it's not exact, and that's what we're kind of playing with. So it's all very new still, and we're learning about it as it comes out and as it changes.
So each of the departments, as they go around, they can sort of touch upon this. It's not a foreign experience to us completely. We even have the math department over the years have had experience of embracing the same sort of components. The members of the team around you here, we have developed at the end of last year, a sort of a position statement that's being revised for the start of the year here. And I would say we're sort of taking a balanced approach. Teachers have flexibility in how here they may use it at this particular point, but with the assistance of the people around the table this morning, we'll be finalizing that position statement to share with the board and also to share with the public and so on. But as much as you say about scanning, if the kids can't do it, yes, there has to be some of that. But I think the bigger thing is to conceptually embrace the concepts, hence the even more significance to the attributes of the vision of the graduate that we need to make sure that kids bring to the table. But I want to thank the people around the table because they have been very much involved in that discussion, leading that discussion. We'll continue to here early in the fall.
If I could just add one thing, this is a prime example, this conversation of how when we look at curriculum, we have to consider the impact to instruction, assessment, and professional learning, right? So just this one technology tool will impact not only how we write curriculum, but the kind of learning experience and what are we asking children to do? And there are instructional moves, right? Where teachers recognize they know the voice of their children in writing, right? They confer with children. So there are instructional moves, but that will require some professional learning to support the use of AI as a technological tool. And so this is a prime example of how we can't look at curriculum separate and apart from other aspects of teaching and learning.
Right.
That's a good question. Just out of curiosity, if you had to guesstimate how much of the curricula is in EduPlanet coming to the end of the summer?
So we have it in a format that it can easily be put into it, but I didn't have teachers entering it at that moment,
Okay.
Just because that would have required an additional training. I wanted them to really have a blitz of just working on it. But we're a percentage. I don't know.
Just a guess. I purposely
Yeah,
didn't
I
ask
mean,
the
I
math
guess-
folks this because the guessing. is
Yeah, I
hard.
mean, I guess I would say that if I'm looking at all of our classes and all of our units and all of our electives, I think that we're probably in the 50% range. I mean, I think as we do it, we get better at it. So the work that we did, the first work that we did was slower than the work that we do now. And I think we're more effective at it.
One of the things, Julie, I know that this group will look forward to is looking at not only the percentage of completion per department, but systemically, right, ELP through grade 12, because there are budgetary implications to writing curriculum. And again, thinking about new resources or additional needs for professional learning. So we'll look to provide the board with not only an update by department, but across curriculum instruction division, ELP through grade 12, so that there's a status of the entire system across
Thank you.
departments.
Thank you. Dave, Tara? Thank
I
you.
would just follow up to the AI conversation and ask if there are any programs to use AI to expedite the EduPlanet work and perhaps also at the same time give teachers familiarity.
You kind of were going in and out. I think the question was, what can you use AI to do the EduPlanet work? Was that the gist of it?
Yeah, speed it up. Also, teachers get familiar with it.
Yeah.
And do it with
I don't know if I heard the whole thing. What you want to?
I mean, the one thing I would say, I appreciate the sentiment behind the question, but I think the work that we do has to be the product of very thoughtful conversations. And I do think we are getting better at it and getting faster at it. But I don't know that it would be, I think we would end up with products sooner, but they wouldn't be better. And that would, I think the quality of the work that we do is important.
And in addition, part of curriculum revision is the idea of implementing the curriculum. And there's a formative assessment piece for us as educators, right? Like, how is this actually playing out in implementation? So is this meeting the needs of the students and staff right before us? And certainly that can't be generated from AI because a lot of that is experiential. So we go back and then take a look at the curricula and see, how is this working out? What shifts need to be made? So just to add on to that.
Thanks. All right, moving across the table.
Mr. Doc comes up, 612 science.
So yes, we had a very productive summer for our 6 through 12 science teachers this summer in terms of curriculum development. At the middle school, we continued to revise and input our completed units into EduPlanet. And so we had 5 out of our 12 teachers working on that progress this summer. In 7th grade, we actually have an example of that revision that took place after a unit was implemented. So we had our first unit implemented last year, a weather and climate unit, and it was quickly realized that had to be split into 2 in order to really get the connections that we were hoping our students to make in that unit. So we revised that unit 1. And then our team continued to work on the 2nd and 3rd unit. So right now we have 3 full completed units in our 7th grade. We had a brand new 8th grade team start. So all 3 of our 8th grade teachers underwent the training and underwent a really step-by-step process of diving into a unit, creating that stage 1 and looking at the outcomes for our students, highlighting examples of assessments that would help us understand if our students were meeting those learning goals, and then really spend some significant time looking at the activities and the experiences that were going to be guaranteed for our 8th grade students. And so the first unit really took about a week and a half to get through for this team. And then we had a second unit that took about a week. So you can see the progress in terms of timing as they get used to this process and as they get an understanding of how deep the thinking has to go around what our students experience and how aligned it has to be from stage 1 to stage 2 and to stage 3. At the high school, we continued our work in our biology classes. So our 300 level biology started off by reviewing the scope and sequence, and just to make sure that the units that we had developed in 2019 still met the needs of our students. And then again, we had a brand new team working through that process. So we had 3 units completed. They worked well into July in order to do that. Our biology 400 team, another great example of how things progress. We had the same team that we had working in the summer of 2022. They completed 2.5 units that summer. They really got to work this summer and completed the last 4 units of the curriculum. So our biology 400 curriculum has been completely transferred into our EduPlanet platform. Some of the benefits of that work I see already is we have some turnover in our biology classes and new people teaching those courses. Just yesterday, I saw a group of teachers really diving into stage 1 and highlighting and making sure that the lesson planning that they were doing within the unit focused on meeting those outcomes. So not just the assured experiences that are found in stage 3, but really more at a granular level, day to day, making sure they're building and working together to build the connections that we want to see across those units. So I really look forward to bringing in later in the year some of the examples of the student work and examples of those connections that are being made to highlight the benefit of this work and highlight the benefit of really taking our time and making sure that we understand how this work must progress and that we understand the connections as educators, because if we don't understand it, our kids are certainly going to have a really hard time making those connections themselves. At some of the other classes that have been working on scope and sequence work, and this is really sort of highlighting and aligning those classes to the next generation science standards. And this was work that needed to be done and still continues to need to be done as we move forward. But forensic science, our AP environmental science class, and then both of our physics classes at the 300 and 400 level really took a dive into what units they had been teaching, making sure that they aligned to both the AP content standards, but also the next generation science content standards, and really highlight areas where we may not see that alignment, and understanding that we may not be able to teach everything if we want to teach our students in a manner that is going to allow them to make the connections that we want to see. So that leads really nicely into our next steps for science. Thank you. So as we look forward throughout the school year this year and next summer, is really looking at those courses where our scope and sequence needs to be looked at and revised, and be able to give us an opportunity to start creating and aligning our new units in those courses using the UBD format. Our professional learning is going to continue to focus on instructional practices that allow students to represent their thinking publicly. If we look at the connections to the vision of the graduate, like, that's looking at communication and empathy and being able to, feel comfortable with communicating your ideas, but also as a group, realizing that all ideas have merit and all ideas can build the understanding of that group, deepening understanding. So really finding places as Ron Berger said, to get off that train and to deepen their understandings around really core science ideas, highlight opportunities for collective thinking and building consensus within a classroom. So how can the thinking of a group be better than the thinking of individuals? And how does that thinking lead to a better understanding for the group as a whole? And then again, communicating that learning. What different ways can we have our students in the classroom communicate that learning? So it's not just writing a lab report, or it's not just answering analysis questions. How can we give students an opportunity to show their thinking that better align with their own abilities and own comfort level? And then really as a whole department, is our vision of the graduate work is really looking at designing and implementing assessments that align to those vision of the graduate competencies and explicitly lay out how we would like to see our students continue to build and show growth towards meeting those competencies from the 6th grade level up to the 12th grade level. So that's a pretty ambitious set of goals, and we're going to continue to work toward that. And as I said, I really look forward to being able to show you some of the fruits of this work over the course of the next year.
Thanks, Christian.
I just have one question. You mentioned, Christian, the teaching in such a way that you're making sure that the connections are formed and that kids are following means that you won't necessarily cover as much material. Can you just explain that a little?
Yeah, and I think over the past couple of years in my science update to the full board is really highlighting the fact that the next generation science standards have 3 components. They have the cross-cutting concepts, which are the overarching concepts that are found in every single science content area. The skill or the science and engineering practices is the habits of mind and the skills necessary to be a scientist, and then the disciplinary core ideas. And those disciplinary core ideas are like very high level, overarching, non-negotiable content pieces found within each of the 3 areas: the physical science, life science, and earth and space science. And so those disciplinary core ideas are really have been highlighted as the most important content pieces. And those may not be found within all of our current, let me rephrase that. Some of our current curriculum may have more content than is actually found in our state standards, the next generation science standards. So it's really teasing out what the standards indicate as being the most important content pieces that our students need to leave our schools with. And also having those tough conversations with teachers about what they like to teach versus what they need to be able to have their students have at the end of a course or at the end of a sequence of courses.
It's a bit broader general questions for anybody, really. I'm just curious how the special education teachers work in this process, and how is that the curriculum for the children that have IEPs? Is that included in this? Do they take the broader ideas and then develop the lessons individually for those students? How does that work in this, either in EduPlanet or in the broader development of curriculum?
So I think that's a conversation that our teachers are having throughout the unit development process. I know from a science perspective, in terms of instructional strategies that we highlight within the stage 3 and thinking about how we can provide and guarantee access for all students within the classroom. That's one of the things that our 7th grade teachers really dove into this year in terms of the revision is how do we provide opportunities for all students to communicate their learning? And so that may be looking at and working with a special education teacher around the end of the unit assessment and saying, like, how is this student going to be able to show what they currently understand? And it's not necessarily about getting every student to the exact same place. It's giving every student to show an opportunity, or giving every student an opportunity to show the growth that they've made over the course of the unit. And so those assessments that are part of stage 2 really focus on giving students an opportunity to show growth and are less of a check-in point that here we've all made it to this particular point along the way.
I'll also say, like in our grade 7 math, the stage 3 We've had most of the stage 1, 2, and 3 developed, and in stage 3, there's a specific part where they have for co-teachers. These are alternate strategies to use in the classroom. This is where parallel teaching can come into play, and then they have linked activities for the co-taught classroom. So we don't have it as a separate course, but there's a place in there for differentiation and for co-teaching strategies. And so in our grade 7 classes, we have that. We haven't developed it for all the classes yet, but those are the time consuming pieces of it. You know, I mean, you could very easily put stage 1 and copy from a textbook, everything that's your goals, but that's not really what this development in EduPlanet's about. It's about the instructional strategies and making sure that you're meeting the needs of everybody. And those differentiated specific activities have been linked for our grade 7 math. So that is in everybody's mind.
And is that the goal, that they'll be linked for every?
Yes,
a
but
big
that's the
process,
time,
but yeah.
that's the really lengthy
Okay.
piece. Yeah.
If I could just add, I think there's an opportunity here with curriculum development for Shirley and I to work together with our teams to ensure, if we're thinking about UDL, although there's an element of stage 3 that requires us to think about the differentiation piece, truly with UDL, we need to be thinking about this at the very beginning and outset of the curriculum writing process. So even as we're looking at the stage 1, part of development, and having special educators at the table when we're writing and revising curriculum is incredibly important for that. And I think this speaks to the earlier piece of, curriculum really needs to be responsive to the students and staff before us. That's why we don't adopt wholesale programs. We want to make sure that we're thinking about the children right before us and the staff implementing the curriculum. So that's something I think that Mrs. Klein and I can come back to the board with as we continue to develop curricula across the areas ELP through grade 12.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on science?
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah,
Just a quick clarifying question, if I may. There was a comment made that we're trying to look at the state standards, make sure we're meeting the state standards, but also perhaps scaling back a bit. There was an example given that teachers may have a subject they want to teach that perhaps we need to dial back. I could also easily imagine a scenario where you have a student who's passionate about a certain subject, and I would think it would be of value if we're able to teach beyond the state standards. I may be thinking about this wrong, but I always saw the state standards as kind of a minimum. And I didn't think they're going to be ranked number 1 in the state because it taught to the state standards the best. I think it's because we have an ability to go above and beyond. So I'm just concerned about this notion we should dial it back, whatever that motivation is, and that should be our target. So if we get some more clarification on that, I'd appreciate it.
To speak briefly to that, thank you for raising that, Mr. Brown. One of the things I think was most inspiring about Ron Berger's keynote address is this idea of honorable and beautiful work. And I agree with you, the standards are a basic expectation of really what every student should know at the end of every experience in a given grade or course. And so certainly there is a power in leveling up those standards and finding out how we can make them more interdisciplinary. The work of the vision of the graduate will give us opportunities to have students demonstrate the standards and beyond the standards. So that's, I think, the notion of the transfer goals within the curricula speak to, we can't just graduate students. I recently saw a cartoon meme of this who, at the end of a PK-12 experience can take tests well. You're really getting to the point of how do students use their learning to ask more questions and generate new learning. So we couldn't agree more. And as Mr. Dockham said, we'll look forward to continuing to bring examples of that, concretely what that looks like as far as the work our students are doing. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing that.
Okay, so we're moving on to Mr. Francis Janosco with 612 English.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be here. I just want to start by saying how proud I am of the great work that our teachers did this summer on our curriculum projects. And I just want to start by thanking them for all of their great work. I'm going to jump right into the first highlight, and the project that we spent most of our time and energy on at the middle school this summer was on our English B course, which of course is our 6th grade writing course. And that was on integrating grammar into our pre-existing units. If you remember, last summer we spent time with our English A reading course on doing the same thing for building in vocabulary building lessons into that, into those units. We did the same in English B. So the goal was to increase the number of lessons that we have on grammar and to increase the number of grammar concepts that we build into those units. I would just say, I'll take a step back. I've said this before. It's not like we never have taught grammar at the middle school. We do at the high school as well. But our goal was to increase in those areas and to do so systematically. Our teachers are very excited to be rolling this out this year, and we will be assessing our work over the course of the year, and you'll hear back from me on the success of those lessons. The other projects that you see listed under the middle school, those are primarily EduPlanet transitional work that we did with some of our pre-existing units. In English A, we took our nonfiction unit and we transitioned that into EduPlanet 21. We did the same in English 7. We did 3 units. We did our graphic novel unit. We did our whole class novel unit, and we did our literary analysis unit. We transitioned those into EduPlanet 21. And for English 8, we did our dystopian literature book clubs unit as well. I'll point out that that work was all 3 stages done at once. We've taken that approach in English. And obviously, we had collaborations with the grade level team, and one of the teachers was the primary person who drafted those units to put into EduPlanet 21. At the high school, the project that we put most of our time and energy into was our grade 11 American Lit course. Certainly that work, we brought together the team. They made some changes or some revisions, I should say, to some of our units. And certainly they made some new assessments that we added. But the primary reason for working on it this summer is to set up something that we plan to introduce this year. And it's something that I touched upon last year in my presentation. And that is what we're looking to do in grade 11 is do something along the lines of what we do in grade 12. So one of the things that students really love about our high school curriculum in English are the choices that they have in grade 12. There's a number of semester-long thematic lit courses that they have as their choices. We're trying to do the same thing in grade 11, but we are not going to toss aside the American Lit focus. We're not going to toss aside our chronological movement through literature, and we're not tossing aside our interdisciplinary relationship with American history. But we think there's an opportunity beyond that to take sections of the course and sharpen the focus using the same literature that we typically use, but in creating a sense of choice for kids who might be interested. So say we might have a section on the American literary tradition, looking at the environment, okay? We would use Thoreau, we would use our romantic poets, we would use a lot of the same things that we currently use, but to sharpen that focus would also allow kids to have a choice, right? So we're trying to do that in our junior year. So you can look forward to us talking more about that at the high school and presenting that and going through that process. The other courses that are listed, just like at the middle school level, are mostly grade 12 semester courses that we transitioned into EduPlanet at 21. And again, that was all 3 stages. If we can go to the looking ahead slide. What we're going to be doing this year in secondary English, we're going to be putting our focus into 3 areas. The first of which is we are going to be taking stock of our writing instruction practices in the wake of ChatGPT and generative AI. Okay, so Mr. Keeler talked a lot about that, and I know his team did some work on the first PD day around that. We spent half of our PD day on this, and we'll be continuing to do it all year long. I expect to have some questions about it, but I'll suffice it to say that if we're going to continue to deliver impactful, high-level writing instruction for our students, we're going to need to strike a balance between how we present the the writing process versus writing products, right? It's essential to our success in this area. The second thing that you'll see listed there is we're going to extend a practice that began last year, and that is developing professional learning expertise groups. And what this amounts to is we have a number of instructional topics that are presented to teachers. They have choice in the matter. When they make their choice, they are placed into an expertise group that's studying that same instructional practice. They are given resources and time throughout the year to investigate, to research, to collaborate, and to test these sorts of practices out in the classroom. At the end of the year, they are asked to share out with their colleagues what they've learned through their work in the classroom and through their research. This was a big hit last year with our teachers. It's also something that they are able to use for their teacher practice goal over the course of the year. So we have a chance to sync that up with our teacher evaluation plan in that respect. And I'll just say we have 9 areas that our teachers are studying. And one of them, once again, the theme you'll notice is AI. We have our largest group is studying how to basically teach using AI in the classroom. Our final area that we're going to be continuing to work on just reflects what you've already heard from me and from all of my colleagues, and that is to have grade level conversations around elements that are necessary for transitioning our units into EduPlanet 21 that we currently really don't have represented in our curriculum documents. So that requires us to have those conversations and to set up that work that we'll be doing primarily in the summer with EduPlanet 21. Before I stop, I just want to highlight that I don't have it represented here, but there is one new course that has wended its way through the system that I hope to be presenting you to you in January, and that's going to be a new senior semester thematic lit course on imaginative and experimental literature. So my great hope is that you'll hear me talk more about that this year. And certainly if you have questions, I'm welcome to your questions.
Personally, I'm super excited that the writing process versus the writing product is a focus. I think that that's a really important piece that, I feel like these students are so used to instant gratification now, and learning how to slow down and revise and edit and draft is important. So thanks for that. Also curious about the teacher PD groups. Are those 612 or is that middle school, high school? How does that work?
No, it's 612,
Okay.
right? And, just on a practical level, it's, one of these things where on a non-PD day, when they're all working together, it might be if there's a pair of teachers at the middle school, it's easier for them to work together. So there's some natural sort of alliances that happen,
Right.
But they are predominantly mixed.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to go back to the instructional expertise groups, which sound terrific, and if or where appropriate, I think it'd be very interesting for us to hear a little more, maybe what came out of last year or what's going on this year, just to help us as a board have a better understanding of how teachers are participating in and contributing to that process. Directly would be really valuable, but it sounds like a ton of great work. So thank you very much.
I don't know if Dave and Tara are still on because it's after 9. Are you guys on? Guess not. Okay. Moving on. Thank you, Francis.
Ms. Christina Mauricio is up for 612 world language. Hello. Ooh, okay.
So my approach in presenting these 2 slides is to show not only what we have done, but what we did this summer and where it all fits into all of the courses that are offered at both Middlesex and at DHS. I'll save my boasting of what an amazing department I have for looking ahead, because I not only really rely on them, have relied on them to do some of this preliminary work, but we have some pretty great stuff coming up as far as progressing through our curriculum writing And I'm really looking forward to continuing to work with them on this and to share with all of you an update on what the department has been up to as a whole, not only this summer, but during this coming school year when I give my curriculum update in a few months. So over the summer, particularly at Middlesex is where I spent most of my energy, and my colleagues spent most of their energy in curriculum revisions and also alignment to UBD in EduPlanet. All units and stages are complete for our Spanish courses, our French courses, and Mandarin 6. Last year was our first year of Mandarin 6. We had 29 students. This year we have 29 students in Mandarin 7. So they're all staying, they're progressing. And we spent a lot of time taking the scope and sequence that we had written last summer and implementing it last school year. And this summer being reflective in sort of how the year went. Did we write a viable scope and sequence? What do our units look like? And let's take that work and continue it this school year with Mandarin 7, which I'll show in my next slide. So that was it's one class. It seems like, oh, it's small. It's a very small number of students, but this is a very heavy lift considering the complexity of the language and how much of a foundation it sets for what those students will do when they eventually go to high school in short 2 or 3 years. I also included Spanish 8 and French 6, just so everyone could see where these two courses fit. We completed curricula for those courses last summer, and we've sort of worked out from both of them to complete the work in both of those languages. There's an audit process that follows, which I'll talk about in my next slide. That's really where we're going to be spending most of our work. But I don't want to say that Middlesex is done, because this work is never done, particularly because the state in May announced that they are revising their world language standards, which hadn't been revised since 1993 and again in 2005. And our district is represented on the group that is going to revise those standards, because I'm on the committee that's going to be doing that. So the nice thing is that they're really looking at how they're aligned to the standards from the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, which our curriculum is that's what we aim to do, is align it to those standards. But again, I don't want to say that we're done, because then, very similar to science and history, we're going to have to look to make sure that we're hitting on all of the important elements of what the state of Connecticut is considering important for our students to learn in world language. In the high school curriculum revisions, what we did over the summer is stage 1. So I sort of stole the model from my colleague in Mr. Keeler in history, who we have curricula in these classes, but instead of going really deeply into one specific course in all of the stages, what we did over the summer here was we worked on stage 1 to then work on stage 2 and 3 during the school year and as well as the summer. So we were able to, what you don't see here is the number of people and the number of hours that they've spent working on this. So to really optimize our human capital and our resources, we said, instead of spending so much time on one course, let's spend this time on making sure that we have really strong stage 1s for all of these courses. And here I also included Spanish 3 and 3 honors, which we're doing this current school year, as well as Spanish 4 and 4 honors, which we did last summer. So you'll see there where those two courses fit in the sequence of Spanish. The 5-6 arts class and the 5-6 film class, if you remember from last year's presentation on new courses to the board, those changes are in effect for this current school year. We took to give everyone a refresher, we took our general Spanish 5 class and we separated it out into 2 courses that are content-based, but also allow students to choose in their fifth and sixth year, which is really their third and fourth year of high school. So these two classes, they're happening now. We have a lot of sections of them. We have a lot of students in there. And the arts class, you'll hear hopefully in a couple of months that if approved, if the course is approved through the process at the high school, that this course is up for consideration to become a UConn early college experience class where students can earn some college credit after they've completed it. So if everything goes well, you'll be hearing from me about that. We can move on to the next slide for looking ahead. So the audit process in Spanish 6 and 7, French 7 and 8, and Mandarin 6. So the understanding by design framework then provides a process for taking the curricula that you have and the units that you have and doing an audit. So the person that wrote that curricula, which would be me and the colleague that actually sat and took all of the resources and input it in UBD, then presents it to the teachers that are teaching that course but did not write the curriculum, and they have a checklist and they perform an audit as they go through what is currently in there and say, there's a series of questions, it's very long, and that not only gets everyone to understand what is in there, but also makes sure that we're considering state standards, school standards like the vision of the graduate, and also provides room to make alterations where necessary. So we've already done that in Spanish 8. My colleagues that teach that course have already participated in that process last school year. And so we spent a couple of hours this summer incorporating those changes, but it really helps to not only get everyone on board, but also make everyone a part of that process. And the same thing will happen with 6 and 7, 7 and 8, and Mandarin 6, because those courses are done. Again, I use air quotes with done because they're never really done, but those teams will be working on those audits this school year. All units and stages in Mandarin 7, which I just talked about with the last slide, will be happening this school year. And in the summer of 24, we'll be working on Mandarin 8 after having 2 full years of not only curricula, but physical humans taking this class. We feel like we're in a really good spot to be able to plan ahead and have Mandarin 8, all stages of Mandarin 8 done over the summer. And then at the high school, stage 1 in all units, French 1, French 3 and 3 honors, Latin 1 and 2, Spanish 3 and 3 honors, and American Sign Language 1, which we have 2 classes of happening now at the high school. There are, I wrote my number down somewhere. We have 34 students taking it, a wide range of students, freshmen who want to take the language for the very first time, seniors who are taking 700 AP classes, including the language that they've been studying since kindergarten, who are now adding this as an elective, to students who, without this course, would maybe not have access to a world language. So it's been great seeing the group come together. I spent a lot of time working with Teresa Rizzo, who was our ASL 1 teacher just yesterday, and starting to write a scope and sequence for the class and mapping it out so we can really do some good preliminary curriculum work there. But a lot of really exciting things happening in my department. And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Christina.
You're welcome.
I think I am all set. Do you just keep trying to be mindful of time?
Yes, very exciting. Thank you. And thanks for the numbers. It's great for 34 students. ASL, I love it. Good stuff.
Thank you.
If I could just circle back quickly, Sarah, to a comment you made in showing your enthusiasm for writing process over writing product. I think there's a similar parallel we could draw to the curriculum revision process. There's a product that comes out on the other side of it, but the process of revising curricula is a very important professional learning experience for our staff. So it's very similar, right? What we see happening in classrooms as far as the staff learning.
Agreed.
Okay, and we're going to shift now to elementary with Mrs. Julie Droller. And we see that what happens at the elementary level certainly supports our students and positions them for success and staff on 612. So we're going to actually start with now the beginning, although it is at the end, the beginning of K-5. And we'll have some, I think, goals also as a district in the future around expanding the work of curricula for there to be a representation of ELP through grade 5.
So I love listening to my colleagues. I have the good fortune of hearing about the vertical teams, which is exciting. The EduPlanet work is a little bit different at the elementary level because we have 5 schools, and in order to have an equitable learning experience for all students, we do rely on resources probably more than our colleagues who teach one subject. Our teachers teach everything. So the process is a little bit different. We focus more on instructional practice and that small group differentiated instruction as our core teaching and learning. But we did put our K3, all of our K3 reading is in EduPlanet. We thought that was very important to have those foundational skills. You know, there's not much creativity with teaching phonemic awareness and phonics. They're very skill-based. But they are important and all standards aligned. So we did complete that this summer. And just like my colleague said, I have an amazing team of teachers that did that work. It was many, many hours. We also had some other curriculum projects going on, but I didn't highlight them because these are the things that really stood out. High frequency word instruction, we are really excited about that. We developed new word lists for kindergarten and first grade. We were primarily just relying on Fondas and Pinnell. And without getting too granular, we did a lot of study. We studied work from the University of Florida Literacy Initiative. We studied Dolch list, Fry list. We studied research that came out about the 109 words that are most commonly found in 50% of children's texts. We looked at our foundations curriculum. We looked at our reading curriculum, and we aligned new word lists that would be supportive of children and a new instructional method using orthographic mapping, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about, aligned to the science of reading. We did some professional learning with that. So that was really exciting. Also, fact fluency in math was another big project this summer. We have been relying on timed math assessments, which are anxiety producing, and we've been reading a lot of research about how, you know, that's not teaching kids math facts. So we have developed a new procedure for teaching kids strategies. We've always taught strategies, but now it's more consistent. It's more interactive. And rather than having those timed assessments, we're going to rely on interviews where students tell us what strategies they used and can talk about that. It's very metacognitive, much more aligned with the vision of our graduate in terms of communication. So we're really excited about that shift. As far as assessments, we also in math revised our grade 1 assessments. We're relying more on formative assessments, and our chapter tests from our Math in Focus program were very cumbersome and time consuming, very literacy based. So we streamlined those. The teachers were literally cheering when we saw that. So that was really exciting work that we did this summer. In terms of looking ahead, and we'll talk more about this on our next agenda item, but we are awaiting the waiver application, and we just learned last week that new updated timing, we were not going to hear back until the end of November, which is a little discouraging. However, we are plowing forward. We are continuing to improve research-based instruction. We are continuing to have building-based professional learning that is aligned to the needs of not only each school action plan, but also each team of teachers. So that is exciting. We are really focused on small group instruction. As I said before, our curriculum and our mini lesson that's one part of our teaching, but we're not delivering curriculum. We're developing readers and writers. So that's really our focus. In mathematics, we're continuing our professional learning on high-quality math instruction and differentiation. We're working again with Dr. Yip Bonhar and working very closely with Ronnie on our instructional practices, and some of the thinking classroom work is happening at the elementary schools as well, focusing on those open-ended tasks. We're also continuing to think about our math acceleration plan and how we are ensuring that we're challenging all of our learners. In terms of the vision of a graduate, we began our professional learning in addition to the convocation. Dr. Fettergan and I facilitated an opening PD for all of our elementary colleagues who really haven't had as much experience as the secondary, to really just help them unpack those competencies. And we're starting to look for what are we already doing and where are those opportunities in our curriculum? And again, thinking about how do we know how kids are doing and how are they growing in those areas? So in terms of gifted education, we have already had some professional learning in problem-based learning and inquiry. That's our focus. Questioning techniques, as you know, part of our strategic plan is to start creating and implementing new units. And we have already started that work, which we're really excited about. If there's any place where the vision of the graduate competencies are just a natural fit, it's with our gifted learners. So we're really shifting to some of those more opportunities for student choice and voice and agency in their own learning. So we are also developing new problem-based learning opportunities in all grades. And we're partnering with Define Learning in the state, which is a really great resource, and just updating some of our teaching and learning.
Thank you. My quick question about, or I guess it's comment, not a question, about the fact fluency change from the timed, 4 times 4, 6 times 6, whatever. The communication about how that has changed and what is happening in the classroom to the parents, is that a piece that you have thought about? Because I feel like we hear a lot that, the math instruction is soft and it's not, it's kind of out in this ethos, and it's not, a lot of parents really like that.
Yes.
Recall time is like,
Yes.
my kids are good at math because they can tell me
Yes.
what that is instantly. Have you thought about that communication piece and explaining why the shift?
Yes, we have created some communication for all teachers for open house so that they can explain that to parents. And we would love to follow up with a presentation as well. Last year, I believe it was last year, we had Nicole Bridge, one of our consultants, who did a presentation for families and did address that. But in terms of specifically what we are doing and how we're shifting, yes, we would definitely like to unpack that.
Thank you. And I'm excited about the high frequency words. That's a good change.
Thank you.
No other questions? Can move on. Okay. Mental health update from Dr. Alicia Dad. And something that's important to note here is this is absolutely a part of our core curricula when thinking about mental health and wellness of students.
So just before you start, Dr. Dad, I just want to mention that at our second meeting, regular board meeting in September here, Dr. Dad is coming back with an update on mental health. So this is a small sort of just component of that, just since it's in regular education. Thank you, Dr. Dad. And I should say, in addition to our colleagues who've been here, her position has been absolutely invaluable in the district. If you ever wonder, like, is money well invested? It's just been a delight to have her influence with staff and students and our community has just been tremendous. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think so.
Pull a little
Pull it closer to you.
And I appreciate being part of this team. I really think that when you're thinking about readiness to learn, mental health is very important in the delivery and absorption of curriculum and content. So I'm grateful to be part of this committee. So over the summer, I piloted a teacher wellness program. When I'm thinking about board goals around recruiting and retention, one of the things that comes up is our own wellness. So the wellness group ran for 6 sessions. It was 2 hours with a group of 6 teachers, elementary through high school. And the focus was on dialectical behavioral principles that could be applied both to themselves and in their classroom. I collected some pre and post data to look at things like burnout and professional
professional development needs. I'm happy to say we got a summer mental health grant, so we're going to use some of that to continue that work. I also worked on some advisory lessons. There's already a series of advisory lessons that existed prior to me joining, but there was a couple gaps. One being looking at what we call the joy of missing out, like helping teach our kids strategies to regulate social media consumption and really the effectiveness of being present in the moment and sometimes turning off to really like tune in. The second one was also on reducing judgmental thinking, also as a way to stay mindful. I think one of the things that we've heard about consistently from kids is this need for perfectionism and how we reduce negative self-judgment and judgment of others. So I worked on those lessons. I've done a lot of administrative consultation over the summer. We talked a lot about vision of the graduate. So working with Julie and Amy and how that integrates with mental health, all of the factors that we think about with vision of graduate ultimately lead to good, solid mental health, and also staff support and individual student consultations. So over the summer, as there might be some student needs that have emerged, how to consult with staff on how to manage whether it's social, emotional, behavioral needs for specific students and be available with more of a clinical lens for how they're presenting. Another area is school climate. Over the summer, a small group of administrators, we got together and looked at a couple different platforms for administering a school climate survey, which would be brief, but it would be to families, to students, and to staff. And then finally, last night was our second of 4 participation meetings at the high school, where over the summer, we really looked at, every high school student has to participate in this meeting if they're going to do any extracurricular activity. In the past, there's been police officer presentations, various topics, including substance use. So we aggregated a group of administrators and also recent graduates from 2016 to 2020 to have a recorded conversation about advice that they would give to current students. And when we think about vision of the graduate, they embodied so much of what we're really showing our kids. So we met with those students, we had the conversation, we recorded it, and last night we have 2 more to go, but they've been very well attended so far. And then looking ahead, I'm happy to say that we hired an amazing candidate as a wellness coordinator. We had a wonderful group of candidates, very well qualified. And so one of the things looking ahead is how we can expand the Wellness Center offerings, maybe things like offering workshops on executive functioning, partnering with some community-based agencies. Another teacher had said, I'd love to come in and teach about financial wellness. And trying to tap into the community of educators that we have to also bring them into the Wellness Center as well. We talked about moving forward with the school climate survey. We'd love to get that out this year. Teacher wellness programming, as I mentioned, the grant had been funded. So we're going to look at other ways in which we can support our teacher wellness. And then in terms of SEL, this year Ruler is going to focus on the meta moment and blueprint. So last year, they're probably in the process right now of reviewing their charters and kind of coming back and grounding the kids in the Ruler work. And then as the year continues, the focus will be more on meta moment and blueprint. And then also I'm going to be leading a parent education series, tools for parenting in the 21st century, 3 to 4 sessions, both for elementary parents and also for secondary, and I'll parse out middle school and high school. And then just continued community partnerships looking ahead, whether that's, we have the Thriving Youth results coming out, working with some of the organizations that that have long been established within the community, Allie Ramstack down at the Department of Mental Health. So that's kind of looking ahead and also doing some of the work within this committee when we look at curriculum and mental health.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dodd. I know I'm going to save my questions for the larger discussion next 2 board meetings from now.
I'm good too. Thank you. I do love the JOMO.
Yeah, that's JOMO.
As an adult, I embrace JOMO.
Me too.
Teach the kids.
Yes.
So that was a very comprehensive share of all of the work, certainly, and I want to thank this leadership team. And then the leadership of our teachers, really, who will be present every day with our students as this work is implemented throughout the year. I certainly look forward to being inside and outside of classrooms to support that work and champion the work alongside Dr. Adley and the rest of our leadership team. So thank you all for that. I'm glad, Sarah, that you made the move to take questions on the interim.
Yes.
It made good sense. Thank you for that. And at this point, if we don't have any other questions
No,
on
I
this
think we're good.
piece, we can move to the
I
next
think
agenda
Francis
item.
and Christina. Thank you.
I might just note that the professional learning of the staff is absolutely critical, right?
Yes.
You know, if I make an analogy to a football team or something, the NFL started, these people are professional players, but they get coached, right? There's video, they get feedback. It is absolutely critically important that we continue to do that. I note it because it may well come up budgetary or otherwise of how to continue to support the teacher's professional learning. So thank you, folks. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, moving on to our second agenda item, K-3 literacy update and the reading waiver.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Parent. So when we developed this agenda together, we thought that really we would provide an update on K-3 literacy, an update on the waiver. We had made a commitment that we would put that on every agenda, whether, even if the update is that there is no update, just to make sure that we're keeping our eye on that as it's an evolving discussion. Since then, since we created this agenda, there was also an update released by Teachers College. And so that was, again, what we were emailing about over the weekend. So we'd like to fill you in on a little bit of that and some next steps for our school district.
Please, thank you.
And Julie and I are happy to kind of take this together and I think probably we should probably start with just saying that the curricula that we have in place and the associated professional learning makes us very confident in the moves that we've made so far as a district. And being that I am new to Darien Public Schools, I'm very pleased to see the work that's happened under Ms. Stroller's direction. I was able to participate with the professional learning at the beginning of the year, right alongside the teachers at the elementary level in the area of literacy and mathematics. So I'd ask Ms. Stroller to give us an update on what that professional learning was, to let you know that we do anticipate not hearing back with regard to the waiver and that approval, I guess, decision until really the end of November, we're hearing at the earliest at this point. So that puts us in a position to kind of wait and see a bit. The positive thing I think to consider is that we do have a very strong and robust, in my view, very well-balanced approach to literacy instruction that is responsive to the needs of our learners. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that also in context with this announcement from TC that was released on Friday. Is it okay, Ms. Stroller, for you to start with just what the teachers experienced as far as a K-3 professional learning experience this summer?
Sure. Well, the orthographic mapping I talked about. So we're continuing our partnership with our staff developers, which, like I said, is building based. It's based on the needs of teachers. Teachers have input. It is around instructional practice. It's not around any program. And we use multiple, as you know, we use Hegarty, we use Foundations, we use the Reading Writing Project units of study. And we use the revised edition, which was created in partnership with Child Mind Institute and their experts in dyslexia. So we feel really, really good about the resources that we're using, but more about the instructional strategies. We've done a lot of work with making assessments and the way we look at assessments and analyze assessments and use that to plan small group instruction. We've done a lot of work around that and shared with teachers spreadsheets where they could focus on not just achievement and how kids are doing 3 times a year during our benchmark periods, but also what's the progress and how are our kids growing and how do we know and how are we intervening early? So we have our core curriculum and then we have interventions. We have supports in place. We have a very robust SRBI process. We have strong leadership. So I feel really good about all of the things that we have in place. In terms of, and by the way, in terms of our student achievement on Smarter Balance assessments, we're the top of the state. maybe not number one, but certainly up there in the top, like 5–10% of the state, which speaks volumes about what we are doing and what our teaching and learning looks like. In terms of professional learning, there is a lot of new research that has come out in recent years, and our teachers are well versed about what that is, not just the media's point of view, but also the actual research from the people who are in the think tanks doing the research in classrooms. So that's all really important. In terms of Teachers College, we did find out last week that there is a split in the college. Teachers College Reading and Writing Project is dissolved. There's now Advanced Literacy, and that is falling under Teachers College Adult Education. It gives them more of an opportunity to partner with other coalitions in the college, such as the Multilingual Learner Department, the Digital Literacy Department, also the Child Mind Institute, which they were partnering on because they had a big hand in the new units, as I said, but more of a partnership in terms of research and the speakers that they bring. Also, the college's work around culturally responsive teaching is a big part of that as well. In addition, we also found out that Lucy retired as the director of the project. She has started her own company. They are still collaborating because there are some staff developers who work primarily for advanced learning, but are doing some consulting. So there is, and they are still writing the units of study. So that doesn't impact any of our practice though. Our curriculum is based on, it wasn't just written by Lucy. And quite honestly, I think that the reason that she retired was to take her name away from all of the media, negative media attention. But the curriculum and the units of study was written by multiple, I mean, dozens, probably 2 or 3 dozen staff developers who are literacy experts, study all of the research and are current and best practice, and it's dynamic. There's an online component that is always being revised. So I feel really good about the curriculum and instruction that we are providing to our students.
So in the past, and I should know this, but I don't. We used to have staff developers from TC come into our district to educate our teachers. Is that still happening? And are those teachers coming, those staff developers coming from this new advanced literacy group, or are they coming from Lucy's?
They're coming from the Teachers College, which is advanced literacy, AKA Teachers College.
So that's a great question. We wanted to talk with that level of detail. This is happening so quickly that our dates with the staff developers and our contract, this is, approved, this professional learning through the board process is with Teachers College. And the dates for the work with those staff developers were established before I came on the scene. I was able to participate just yesterday with Julie and staff developers in each of the elementary schools that we've met with so far, with those building principals, assistant principals, and their leadership teams. And what's really important to note is the staff developer is not providing professional learning on just the unit of study. The professional learning is around instructional practices. So they're looking at our curricula, which is not one program. That's, we submitted the waiver to the state because we believe in Darien Public Schools that we have a robust curricula that provides a full scope, a full body literacy experience for our learners. And the idea is that each of the schools was thinking about their data, where their students and staff are, and we worked with the staff developers to begin to initiate what will be the plan for that school with regard to professional learning. So really around the instructional strategies, regardless of the resources, plural, that we use. So we'll be looking to provide an update specifically about what that looks like in each of the schools and what the outcomes of that will be.
So that I appreciate that clarity, because I think there is some concern that the people coming from outside in are only using that unit of study, but I'm glad to know that that is not the case.
One of the things, it's an excellent question. One of the things we talked with them about was the August professional learning, specifically related K1 to the high frequency word list, orthographic mapping, how we will design small group instruction to meet the individual needs of our growing readers.
Thank you. right.
It was very convincing.
Sarah.
Oh, hi.
Just a comment. Given the excitement people feel about Teachers College and that this is happening, and we have a light agenda meeting, meeting on Tuesday, perhaps the committee would recommend that we put this as at least an update as a small agenda item for Tuesday night.
I think that's fine.
We can,
We'll discuss that after meeting. Thank you. All right, any other questions? And I know we'll continue to talk about this as we go. So this is not the end of this conversation.
It'll be a standing agenda item.
Okay, perfect.
With regard to both the literacy progress of the district, the waiver, and that's another important piece, right? We still have to await the decision that will impact to some degree the next steps for moving forward.
Are all the waivers on the same schedule?
They
as
are.
far as we know?
Yes.
Okay, so we have no idea which way the tide is going on these things. Nobody's heard.
We
so
will
to
all
speak.
hear simultaneously is what we've been told at hopefully the end of November.
We do know that PCG is working, is the consulting group that is looking at reviewing the waivers, and they just recently signed a contract with them. In the meantime, the state is offering several professional development opportunities, which we are participating in.
I know Lucy's departure will give some districts some pause. And to be honest with you, on Friday, give us a wee bit of pause, right? But we're confident in where we are at the moment in our position.
All right, agenda item number 3, and just, I want to be cautious of time. I know this room is being used at 10, so we have 15 minutes to go through the rest of our meeting. All right, paraprofessional formula.
So through the budget process last year, there was a number of items that were identified by the board for reflection before the budget process this year. This was one of them. And essentially they were looking for sort of recommendation as to moving forward, how that might look in terms of instructional aids. And we specifically paraprofessionals consist of instructional aids because we have instructional aids for regular education and also for special education. We use our paraprofessionals. So just real quickly, this is the formula that has been used for some time, 1 to 89 students. It's based on enrollment. There's actually a lower bar to that. It's like the bottom boundary is 1 to 80 students, right? So you don't have too few, too many. Now the history of that goes back well over a decade, and I can't ascertain exactly why that was ever done. I tried to do a wee bit of research on it, but that particular ratio was just based on the actual enrollment of this projected enrollment of the school at a particular time. It has served as well, I would say. And when you look at the various other schools that we have put down here, it's for the most part in line with the other schools. For the most part, other schools align the instructional age to the younger grade levels, particularly in K and 1. Even though we do essentially K through 5, the preponderance of their use is K and 1. They're used for several things. We also have in our count, we include in that count a half of a paraprofessional for the library media center. And then you can see that we add in also for the campus monitors. Obviously, a campus monitor isn't essentially an instructional aid, but that's where it comes into play. Our instructional aids also do arrivals, dismissals, coverage for lunch, coverage for recess. They provide a number of services. The K through 12 or the K through 5 essentially is at the discretion of the actual principal. The principal is a person who oversees the work of the paraprofessionals, the dissemination of the paraprofessionals. He or she discerns where the paraprofessionals should be. Again, preponderance is in K through 1. I'll just cut the chase for time purposes. I don't see a reason to change this. This is a very small percentage of the paraprofessional staff in general that we have. It's very small, and when you look, it's small in nature. When you look at it, instructional aids, essentially, if you're not including the campus monitors, you've got 3, 4, or 5 of them. So that's not an awful lot. They're a category that are one of the most dedicated, hardworking groups of people that assist the school in many, many ways, including culturally. And it would be difficult to lose those people. Now, having said that, I'll always place a caveat that when budget time comes around, depending on the nature of a budget, everything is relatively on the table. But that being said, I'm not bringing forward a recommendation to the board to change this. If the board would wants to discuss that, then they can have that discussion. But at the moment, I think it's serving our needs. And I think it's relatively in line with other districts. And again, they're a big part of the culture and assistance at the elementary level on a number of areas. So I'll leave it at that and open it up for discussion.
I'm just curious, I know you said that the principal at each school decides who goes where for how long, et cetera. Is there a general sense that they're used the same way in each of the 5 schools?
Oh, like what we've just described, like K through 5 for what I've just described, they're used, yes, and they're preponderantly K and 1, but they have a little bit of discretion there in terms of the needs of the compositions of the class, so on and so forth. I think this should be separated from, some people may recall that we added paraprofessional in for Knox Ridge School, right? But that was when it tipped, right? So they're not necessarily designed for that.
Right.
I would also say, in all full transparency, we've even have to use them for coverage for substitutes. That's not unusual. It's not what they're there for,
Ideal,
pretendly,
right.
but we try to avoid that if we possibly can. But that's another use that occasionally they have to pinch it.
Arrival and dismissal, they're real utility players.
Right, absolutely. And I asked Amy if we could, do you have a job description?
I do.
Perfect. So is that something that we can add to the packet that can throw up online? Is that- can we do
Yes,
that?
we can do that.
Yeah.
If we add something here now, we can put it up online.
And to clarify, just a language piece, there are 2. One is library aid and the other is instructional aid. So the agenda says paraprofessional formula, but I've learned that really the position that we are talking about is the actual instructional aid.
Right. And so that we have half the time and half FTE allocated to the library in each. Is there one particular instructional aid per school, or do they all, how does that work?
It's really hard to get like a half-time person to hire half to, so I think in most of the schools you have an instructional aide who does I'll call it the instructional part of it, classroom part of it for half of it, and then
Okay,
the
so
other
it's
half is
one person per
Yes.
school.
Just has like a split role.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you answered my questions, like whether or not you were going to think about changing anything here, but it sounds like it's working and meeting the needs of our students.
Yes, my questions were answered too. I think this may be an opportunity to make sure we capture somewhere what the rationale is for continuing this way, so that 10 years from now, someone else isn't saying, I have no idea why they did this like this. The way ours is laid out is a little different than what we see for the other DIRG district approaches. So I'm not suggesting that ours is better or worse, but I think it might be worth capturing what our rationale is, just so it exists.
So I just clarify, if it comes to budget time, and there are tough decisions to be made for some reason, I'm not excluding any category of personnel programs off the table at the moment. In case someone said, well, you sat at a table here and said, well, right now I'm not recommending we change this. I like it the way it is.
Well, what I'm hearing is this works, and it doesn't mean that something else couldn't work, or something else wouldn't work if we had to look at something else. But what we're saying is what exists right now is meeting the needs. So.
And, while we have a formula for each of these other districts that are represented, sometimes the formula as it may be established here might be different than what's actually happening and playing out in practice in these other locations. We don't know, but this is what's been shared at this point.
Is this all elementary, what we're looking at from the other DIRGs?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there an equivalent at the secondary level?
An equivalent?
Instructional aid?
No. Certainly with special needs and special
Right,
services.
there's
And we also
one-on-ones,
have libraries as a paraprofessional in their assistant.
Thanks. All right, public comments.
Good morning. If anyone in person would like to participate in comment, please wait for the chair to acknowledge you. You'll have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please state your name and address.
Anybody in person?
Can I take a wee moment just for the record? Michelle's off today, actually, and she's doing this remotely from home. She's off today, but she's doing this from home. So thank you, Michelle. I
Thank you,
appreciate that.
Michelle.
My pleasure. Nobody in person?
Nobody in person.
If anyone online would like to participate, please use the raise hand icon. There are no raised hands at this time.
Okay, but I take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Michelle. Motion.
I'll second. Well, thank you very much, everybody.